Hello, good evening, and welcome back. As we all know, Sweden has the highest rate of grenade usage in any country outside of countries currently at war. And the arson continues. Here we have the church in the Swedish no-go zone has been set on fire. Yes, the arson continues. This calls back to others that have been bombed in Sweden, but of course also the Notre Dame fire. Whether or not that was arson or not is of course yet to be decided. And so many of these things just go down the memory hole. Did we ever find out about the real motive behind the Las Vegas shooting? No, of course we didn't. That goes down the memory hole. Find out anything about Notre Dame? No, of course, that goes down the memory hole. And there are so many things like this. Of course, Epstein's suicide, that seems to be going down the memory hole. As with all these things, so they basically just hope, I say they, as in the, let's say the corporate overlords, the people who control the news flow, whoever that might be, as black-pilled as you wish to be, to say, yeah, even if this story gets out, we have to allow some amount of news to retain some sort of credibility and allow people to think that they can actually access the news. But of course, we're still going to hide the more important stuff. Just like the World Trade Center being attacked, the Twin Towers being attacked by using aircraft as missiles, and the 9/11 attacks, of course. Just a few days after, they had, I believe it was about $5 trillion unaccounted for. Just these kinds of things. If it's a bigger news story like that, of course, then there just seems to be something going on just afterwards, so people forget about it. And even Bill Burr, the American comedian, has joked about it to say that, yeah, that there might be some travesty or something awful, and then a few days later, oh, McDonald's has a new food item on the menu, and it's that sort of thing. And, you know, if you want to get down to conspiracies, of course, then, hey, seeing as we're all concerned about immigration and democracy not being followed given Brexit, then what's all this about the coronavirus? How did this come about? Isn't that curious? But yes, of course, coincidences happen, and if you think that the world's out to get you, you're not going to be able to make anything in this world. So you've got to play the game to win the game, but of course, if you don't play the game, you can't lose. So that's your decision to make, it's up to you. But with thoughts of coronavirus and any disease that can happen at any time, it is a good idea to have some sort of stored food items and survival skills to get by, no matter what happens, so that you can still survive and thrive even. And hey, any challenge is an opportunity to come out bigger and stronger than before. But back to the topic in hand, a church in a Swedish no-go zone with a large migrant population was set on fire, with some claiming that the blaze was started by Islamists. Gottsunda Church, which is located in an area where half of the inhabitants are migrants, is under the branch of the Church of Sweden, which has repeatedly expressed its support for mass immigration. So, as is often the case with these, the people who would be causing the arson, anybody who goes against these institutions, they have little care for the message. They aren't that savvy in their targets, per se. Obviously, they would direct their hate and vitriol towards people who are against them explicitly, but even if they dispute each other on ideological grounds, then they are fair game. So if it is Islamism, and any Islamist attacks will go against any policies that are against Islam, and so the Western way of living, as we haven't adopted Sharia law yet, they will of course see us as fair targets and saying, well, you should actually go against the people who are the spokespeople. They will try, but they won't care as long as they do damage the West, however they can. And the same goes here. So even if the church is trying to appease their enemies by saying, yes, we're for mass immigration, it's fine, it isn't going to be good enough unless you bend the knee and yield and do exactly what you're told and exactly what they want you to do. You are still a target. So according to reports, law enforcement quickly noticed that someone had set fire to the church's wooden facade and were able to alert firefighters, preventing more extensive damage. The blaze could not be controlled with fire extinguishers, but was eventually put out by the fire brigade. Authorities say the fire was arson, but are currently refusing to confirm whether the motive was religious. Because of course they would. Trying to find any concrete news on anything like this is very difficult. Trying to find the stories in the first place is also very difficult. So props to Paul Joseph Watson for actually doing the journalism to uncover these stories. It's nice when you can have the backing and the budget in order to delve in to expose these stories in the first place. We all long to get to that point. So to quote, Gottsunda is classed by the police as an extremely vulnerable area, which is a euphemism for a notorious ghetto marked by rampant crime, unemployment, extremism, and lawlessness. Over half of Gottsunda's population of about 10,000 are immigrants. Arson attacks are not uncommon in Gottsunda, from Sputnik. And Archbishop Antje Jacqueline responded to the fire by tweeting, "I feel anger when I hear about suspected arson at Gottsunda Church." Nevertheless, are they going to care about her anger? No, of course they're not. And to even go on to point out, many churches burn in the Middle East. Islamists burn them. The fact you did not understand that the same thing is going to happen here is astonishing. Your anger helps little. That anger goes over if it turns out to be a Muslim who has lit it up, tweeted another. Yes, they're not going to let your hypocrisy lie. Has the love bombing started yet? Asked another user alongside an image of love hearts posted at the entrance to Uppsala Mosque in support of victims of hate. Love bombs and trucks of peace. This is the way of the future. Meme to your heart's content. And that is the way. I mean, it's always the way that the government is going to be one step behind. It's why central planning doesn't work, because the government doesn't understand the people. But also, if you do try to corral and control the people, then they are going to find ways around it. They are going to slip out of the net in one way or another. That, as corny as it sounds, it does seem like good will always overcome evil. That the freedom, liberty-minded people will always find a way around. And maybe you've been watching too many movies, whatever you might wish to say. But nonetheless, when these kinds of things happen, that, of course, even in more tyrannical regimes, they always end. But that is because during their reign, there are always different cells, different groups of people who come together in order to overturn the government and to get that support. They speak in code, they use humour to mask their true intentions, anything like that. And that's exactly what a meme is. It's speaking the truth through a joke so that the ideas aren't that clear to... Well, they can still be clear to people, but if they're not clear to people, then of course it's a way to mask that. And even if it is clear, then it's said in a humorous way where you can't stop someone from doing it without seeming like the bully yourself. As I think George R. R. Martin is known to be quoted for saying that if you cut out someone's tongue, it doesn't mean that he is wrong, it just means that you are afraid of what he has to say. And the same goes here. So they've also mentioned another church in a migrant-heavy area of Sweden has bombed on 2 separate occasions, with police acknowledging there was a motive against the church. If you'd like to point out what it is, then go ahead. Seeing as the atheist lobby, if you wish to call that, though, it seems to be an incoherent group of individuals, that they've been against religion in terms of saying, well, there is no God, and every man for himself, so you might as well make the life you want to live, the best life that you can. And of course, Ricky Gervais as well, when said, "Oh, but you're not religious, that means you've got nothing to live for." He replied, "No, I don't believe in God, that means I've got nothing to die for." Very, very stark contrast. But it hasn't seemed to become animosity towards the church or the organised religion, seeing as they seem to leave each other alone, and it's more apathy. That, of course, you've had the Pope saying that even atheists can go to heaven if they're good. And it's that kind of thing that both sides to each other, they've just basically said, hey, if you let us get on with our lives, we'll let you get on with your lives. Go ahead. And so it's just apathy. Nobody cares. But, of course, when you do have a more pertinent ideology forming and growing within your own country, some aggressive ideology that views you as the enemy and has declared war against you years ago, if not decades ago, if not centuries ago, depending on the scale that you're looking at it, then you are going to have these sorts of attacks. And it comes down to perhaps a new culture arising, saying, well, we can't have this. That at some point, it's going to be a tipping point, at which point the majority is going to say, yes, this is what we're okay with allowing. We have changed over because you've brought some good points. We've negotiated. We've got this compromise. But anything over this line, now the ball's in our court and your balls are in our fist. And so if you go beyond that line, then the majority is going to be against you and we will actually reprimand you for it. So at the moment, with the pendulum swinging from side to side and nobody knows what's happening at the moment, really, trying to suggest that, you've got the dissident right that are xenophobic, and then you've got the left wings that are the mainstream and saying that brown people can't do any wrong and shouldn't be held accountable for their own actions, that it will become acceptable again, and who knows when or at what point that it will be. Well, yes, these are the rules that we have all agreed upon. We have the vast majority support, and therefore any outliers will be prosecuted. Don't know what those rules are going to be. We can only hope, and of course through that hope try and engineer it to our desired outcome, to try and say, well, everyone's an individual. You get no special privileges, and you're not put down based on your unalienable characteristics either. It all comes down to ideology. We respect all people as individuals. You are skilled, you are capable, therefore you can achieve whatever you want to do. We won't stop you, but that also means that if you do something that causes harm to others, we will hold you and you alone accountable for what you have done. So, hey, with that in mind, just try to keep protecting your own property. Do try and stay within the bounds of the law, understand the law and what you can do so that you're not prosecuted, given that chances are if you listen to this channel and like what I have to say, then you don't agree with the narrative that's even being pushed by the police force in this country, and therefore you really have to make sure everything you do is well within the bounds of the law to escape prosecution. You've seen what Harry Miller had to go through, even though he was supposed to be one of them as well. So they will turn on their own as well. So just make sure you know where you stand as you keep going. And, of course, always have an escape plan. But until next time, folks, have a good one.